I'm a little embarrassed to say that I had never read the Book of Mormon before going on a mission. I read it 3 or 4 times on a mission, enjoyed it, but I have to say I wasn't fully excited about it on the mission. I did give it to people to read. I believed it was true and from God because I believed that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God, and thus it was a product of his prophetic work. But I never took it seriously. And in some weird way, when I even joined the church educational system, for many years, I never taught the Book of Mormon. I don't know why it never worked out that way until I was hired at BYU. I came here in the summer of 1983, and right away I was given, by fall, 8 sections of the Book of Mormon to teach. And so I had a baptism by fire. And in a sense, I'd like to describe what I would call my spiritual odyssey with the Book of Mormon. I first fell in love with the story. The narrative to me was vital and important. I came to gain a witness of the Spirit, first of all, that Nephi was a real person, that Lehi was a real person, there really wasn't a Benadi who was put to death, and that Alma did have a real born-again experience. I came to gain a testimony that Mormon was a mighty compiler and editor, and that Moroni was amazing. And so, as the first few years passed of my teaching Book of Mormon, in and out, every semester, I found myself gaining a deep conviction of its historicity, that it came the way we said it came, that there were angels involved, golden plates. I have to tell a quick story here. When I was with a dear friend of another faith who is just a wonderful, wonderful ambassador for Christianity, we were with Elder Jeffrey Holland on one occasion. We were talking about things, and this man encouraged us to do this and do that to become better understood by people of the world. And I watched as Elder Holland listened very, very kindly. And then Elder Holland said this. He said, "Those are good. That's good advice. That's good counsel for us. But you need to know," he said, "we're going to be dragging that Book of Mormon and those gold plates behind us for a long time." And I thought that affirmed what I began to feel early. There really were gold plates. There really were angels. I gained a testimony first and foremost of the story. But the longer I taught, as years passed, I began to fall in love with the doctrine. And I found myself persuaded that, of course, the story is vital because it's in the story that the doctrine comes. The narrative lays out the doctrine, the context for the doctrine. And so the doctrine of rebirth and the doctrine of the destiny of Israel and the doctrine of salvation by the grace of Christ, and so on and so on and so on. Those things began to just weigh on me, and I began in my teaching, of course, to spend more and more and more time, yes, covering the story, but focusing principally upon the doctrine. And I think for the longest time I thought, I think I've arrived on this thing. I think I've got this figured out. Yes, we teach the story, but we focus on the doctrine because it's doctrine, as President Packer says, that changes attitudes and behavior. But as years began to go by, I treasured the story as always. I treasured the doctrine, but I began to sense that there was a third stage through which I was passing, and I call it, for want of a better expression, personal encounter. And it had to do with a personal encounter with the book itself and with its teachings. I remember one day specifically reading 2 Nephi chapter 31, where Nephi is giving the doctrine of Christ, where he's talking about the baptism of Jesus, where he's talking about how we're changed through that ordinance and through coming unto Christ. And I found myself sensing that Nephi wasn't just teaching doctrine. I sensed that Nephi was talking to me. And I sensed that Nephi and the other prophets were saying to me, "Listen, Bob, we sought for Christ. We found him. And you can too. Now go. Do what we've done." And from that point on, the Book of Mormon became a personal engagement for me, meaning loved the story, treasured the doctrine, continued to teach those things, but I found myself and saying to my students, the value of engaging the book in terms of its personal impact on you. It's not enough just to know the doctrine of the Book of Mormon, as vital as that is. We must internalize and incorporate the doctrine. It's nice to know that being born again consists of the following 6 things. It's vital to know I can be born again and seeking to have that same experience. And so my personal spiritual odyssey with the Book of Mormon has gone from story to doctrine to personal encounter, and I think they're all vital. President Benson, some years ago, said it this way. He said, "We should know the Book of Mormon better than any other book. Not only should we know what history and faith-promoting stories it contains, but we should understand its teachings." And then I love this. If we really do our homework and approach the Book of Mormon doctrinally, we can expose the errors and find the truths to combat many of the current false theories and philosophies of men. And then he added, "I have noted within the church a difference in discernment, insight, conviction, and spirit between those who know and love the Book of Mormon and those who do not. That book is a great sifter." He's right on. I mean, he's talking. I've seen it. When a person is immersed in the doctrines of the Restoration, when a teacher is immersed especially in the language and the learning and the logic of the Book of Mormon, he or she teaches with a spiritual power that you do not enjoy if you have not paid that kind of price. Now, getting back to what I mentioned about story, doctrine, personal encounter. It's interesting that in the 84th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, when the Lord states that the church at that point in time still rested under a kind of condemnation because they treated lightly this new covenant, the Book of Mormon, the New Testament, if you will, of the Book of Mormon, that they could come out from under it by teaching it. But then he goes on to say, not only to say, but to do the things that are written. That implied to me, there's personal encounter. There's personal engagement. Not enough just to know the doctrines and be a doctrinal theological wizard. But the real test is, to what extent have I made it a part of me? How is it impacting me personally? How is it turning my life around? In that sense, I think I'd say it this way. The Book of Mormon isn't just another book about religion. It is religion. It is pure religion. It is the religion of Jesus Christ, and He is its author.